On a humid morning in August 2012, a 19-year-old student named Jenny Gamez packed her bags and left her life in Oregon behind. She was heading to Wisconsin to meet a man she knew only by the alias Mr. Handcuffs, and she had no idea that was going to be the end of her life. Jenny was uniquely vulnerable. She had lost both of her parents at the age of only 5 years old. She had to live most of her life in foster care without getting the love of her parents. As a teenager, Jenny got pregnant and had a baby out of wedlock. But due to herself being in foster care, the custody of her baby went to the father. By all means, Jenny's life wasn't going the same direction a normal teenager's life would go. She probably felt undesirable and unwanted. These feelings eventually led her to seek solace and validation in the online world of BDSM. To Jenny, the world of BDSM and the master-slave dynamic that came with it might have offered the sense of belonging and structure she lacked in her personal life. Jenny became active on online BDSM and fetish websites, where users often interacted under aliases and explored dominant submissive dynamics. It was there that she began communicating with a man who went by the username Mr. Handcuffs. Using that alias, he portrayed himself as an experienced dominant and advertised for a submissive partner interested in extreme 24/7 control-based relationships. Their conversations gradually intensified, moving from fantasy into discussions of real-world submission and trust. Mr. Handcuffs emphasized themes of ownership, obedience, and long-term commitment, presenting himself as someone who could offer stability, structure, and purpose. As their online relationship progressed, he encouraged Jenny to distance herself from her previous life, framing it as a necessary step toward complete submission. He portrayed outside relationships, social media, and independence as distractions from what he described as a more authentic and fully committed dynamic. Mr. Handcuffs was clearly manipulating and trying to isolate Jenny emotionally and make her increasingly dependent on him. By the time plans were made to meet in person, Jenny believed she was entering a serious, permanent relationship, one built on trust, control, and surrender, without realizing the danger she was placing herself in. In August 2012, Jenny flew to Wisconsin to meet Mr. Handcuffs at a hotel, believing she was finally entering a stable, permanent relationship. They checked in on a Friday, but by Sunday morning, everything had gone horribly wrong. Jenny was asked to submit herself to Mr. Handcuffs, who started a session of breath play, an activity involving the constriction of oxygen. While Jenny was defenseless, bound by handcuffs with a ball gag in her mouth, Mr. Handcuffs wrapped a rope around her neck and pulled it hard enough and long enough that she slowly suffocated to death. Whether it was an accident or intentional, we'll never know for sure. But what followed after it might give us an idea. Instead of calling 911, the man stuffed Jenny's naked body into a pink suitcase and wheeled her out of the hotel on a luggage trolley. He drove her back to his apartment, but he had a problem. It was the middle of a sweltering Wisconsin August. He knew that if he didn't do something, the smell would give him away. He went into his kitchen, emptied out his refrigerator, and ripped the shelves out. He then took Jenny's body and folded it inside the appliance, closing the door on his secret. For over a year, this man lived a completely normal life. He went to work, he chatted with neighbors, and he even continued to hunt for new potential slaves online. Because he couldn't use his fridge for food, he lived almost entirely on fast food. Because Jenny had limited family contact, her disappearance was never immediately reported. Nearly 2 years after her murder, a highway, Maintenance crew found her decomposing body inside a suitcase while mowing the long grass along Highway 12 in Walworth County, Wisconsin. But Jenny's dead body wasn't the only thing they found. Right besides her was another suitcase with another dead body of a woman. The discovery immediately struck investigators as a horrible crime and a gruesome mystery. They were shocked, noting that this type of discovery was unprecedented in the area. They observed a chilling contrast between the two sets of remains. The black suitcase contained Jenny Games's decomposing dead body, with a ball gag in her mouth and a rope tightly wound around her neck. Due to the level of mummification, investigators labeled her as Jane Doe and attempted a facial reconstruction, though the resulting image offered little hope for immediate identification. Meanwhile, the purple suitcase held a body wrapped in plastic that had been completely mummified. With one hand protruding from the wrapping, officers discovered identifying tattoos on the woman in the black suitcase, specifically the name Alyssa and a birthday on her ankle. This allowed them to link the remains to Laura Simonson, a 37-year-old mother of 7 who the police had been looking for over 6 months. Months before the body was found, Laura Simonson was reported missing by her mother in Minnesota. The disappearance immediately raised concern. Laura was a mother of 7, deeply connected to her children, and those who knew her said she would never simply walk away from her life without explanation. As part of the missing person investigation, law enforcement began examining Laura's recent communications and online activity. During that process, investigators discovered that Laura had been active on BDSM and fetish websites and had been in regular contact with a user who went by the alias Mr. Handcuffs. Police obtained records from those websites and worked with digital forensics specialists to analyze account data, email addresses, and login information associated with the Mr. Handcuffs profile. Although the user operated under multiple usernames and email accounts across different platforms, investigators noticed consistent patterns that linked the profiles together. Those digital trails ultimately pointed to a single real-world individual, 52-year-old Steven Zelich of Wisconsin, a former police officer. With this information, investigators identified Zelich as a person of interest and began formally tracking his movements, online activity, and connection to Laura Simonson. This digital link between Laura and Mr. Handcuffs became the first solid lead tying Steven Zelich to her disappearance, long before her body was discovered. While doing their research on Steven Zelich, investigators found that he was a former police officer from West Allis, Wisconsin, whose law enforcement career was marked by a pattern of predatory behavior and concerning encounters. Though he had served with the Mequon Police Department until 1989, he joined the West Allis Police Department as a patrol officer for 12 years before being forced to resign in 2001. This resignation was triggered by a messy altercation with a woman he had met at a bar. She was eventually seen running away naked from his home, screaming and begging for help. The woman informed police that Zelich had body slammed and choked her on his floor, and she was only able to escape when he stepped away to grab his handcuffs. Following this incident, investigators uncovered further misconduct, such as stalking and misuse of authority. Several other women complained that Zelich had stalked them, utilizing his authority to conduct unsolicited traffic stops for the sole purpose of gathering their personal information. He reportedly frequented strip clubs while on duty, using his role as a police officer to intimidate or impress women in hopes of taking them home. Zelich ultimately resigned from his position in 2001 before internal investigations into his conduct could be completed, effectively ending his career. On June 25, 2014, around 3 months before Laura's dead body was found, investigators contacted Zelich for an interview related to the missing person investigation. Once at the station, The detectives questioned Zelich regarding his digital communications and his whereabouts during the disappearances of Laura Simonson. They showed him that he had contact with Laura under the alias Mr. Handcuffs, and that they were going to meet in person in early November. During this interview, Steven Zelich told the investigators that while he knew Laura from online interactions, he had no intention of meeting her and had never actually met her in person. At that time, police did not have enough proof to take him into custody or charge him, as they were still treating the matter as a missing persons case. So, they had no option but to let him go. 3 months later, the police now had the dead body of Laura and a very strong reason to suspect Steven Zelich as the man behind it. But they still had no evidence. Since Laura had been reported missing from Minnesota, police issued an investigative notification to all local businesses alerting them of Laura Simmons. This led to a major breakthrough when a manager at the Microtel Inn and Suites in Rochester, Minnesota, recognized her from the report. The manager recalled Laura staying at the hotel in November 2013, accompanied by a man under the alias Mr. Handcuffs. And when they saw the hotel's surveillance footage, they knew they had caught the killer. Surveillance footage confirmed that Steven Zelich walked into the hotel with Laura Simonson, but checked out of the hotel alone, wheeling a luggage trolley stacked with a heavy suitcase and other bags that seemed excessive for one person. Investigators reviewed hotel guest records and found that out of 27 guests, only he had paid in cash and refused to leave a paper trail. With this newfound evidence, the police were able to get an arrest warrant and a search warrant on Steven Zelich's house and devices. They called Zelich in for a second round of interrogation, and by this time, they had also identified the second body to be Jenny Games through the help of her dental records. So now, the investigators were directly asking questions about Jenny Games and Laura Simonson. Investigators confronted Steven Zelich through a combination of digital forensics, physical surveillance, and psychological tactics that leveraged his background as a former police officer. When presented with the evidence, Zelich crumbled under the pressure and confessed almost immediately once he realized detectives had search warrants for his home and computers. Zelich confessed that he first contacted Jenny Games online when she was roughly 16 or 17 years old. They reconnected years later when she was 19. She traveled from Oregon to Wisconsin by plane to meet him, intending to become his permanent caged slave. After several meetings, they met at a hotel in late August 2012. He described a ritualized session involving handcuffs, ball gags, and a rope. Zelich admitted to tightening and releasing the rope for arousal, but claimed he eventually pulled it hard enough and long enough without releasing it, resulting in their suffocation. Zelich claimed that she died accidentally, and then he stuffed her dead body in his refrigerator for over a year. He then confessed that the same thing happened with Laura Simonson. He flew to Minnesota and met Laura, after which they went to a hotel. He claimed both of the deaths occurred accidentally, and he had no intention of committing murder. Regardless, he took Laura's dead body back to his apartment in Wisconsin. Zelich moved Jenny's body from the refrigerator back into a suitcase and placed it in his trunk alongside Laura. The bodies remained in his vehicle for months until June 2014, when a streak of 80-degree weather caused the smell of decay to become uncontainable. After a coworker noticed the odor, Zelich dumped the suitcases along Highway 12 in Walworth County, Wisconsin, where they were later found by a road crew. During his final interrogation, he continued to frame the murders as poor judgment rather than intentional homicide, despite detectives noting the two cases were a total mirror of each other. During the interrogation, detectives questioned Zelich about a handwritten flight itinerary for a woman named Audrey from the UK, scheduled to arrive in November 2013. While investigators feared there might be a third victim, Zelich claimed he had no recollection of the woman and dismissed the notes as internet foolishness, common in the BDSM community. Steven Zelich received a total sentence of 70 years in prison to be served consecutively, effectively ensuring he will remain incarcerated for the rest of his life. His sentencing was split between the two states where his crimes were prosecuted. In March 2017, a Kenosha County judge sentenced Zelich to 35 years in prison for the death of 19-year-old Jenny Games. He had pleaded guilty to first-degree reckless homicide with the use of a dangerous weapon. By pleading to this lesser charge, he avoided a first-degree intentional homicide conviction, which would have carried a mandatory life sentence. Later in 2017, in Olmsted County, Minnesota, Zelich pleaded guilty to second-degree murder for the death of Laura Simonson. The sentences were ordered to run consecutively, meaning one begins only after the other is completed. During the Minnesota proceedings, observers noted that Zelich showed little emotion. Investigators noted that due to his age at the time of sentencing, the length of the terms ensures he will no longer pose a threat to the community upon any potential release.